Welcome to Mindset Mastery Moments, the podcast dedicated to helping you unlock your full potential through the power of mindset. Join Dr. Alisa Whyte, a transformative creator and multi-award-winning trailblazer, as she guides you on a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. With a background in corporate leadership and workforce development, Dr. Alisa has dedicated her career to inspiring individuals to achieve their goals and dreams. Known as the #1 mindset disruptor, she firmly believes that the key to success lies within the mind. Dr. Whyte has witnessed the incredible impact a shift in mindset can have on one's life, career, and relationships. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just beginning your journey of self-discovery, you'll find valuable lessons, inspiring stories, and practical tools to elevate your life. In each episode, Dr. Alisa engages with thought leaders, coaches, and changemakers from around the globe, exploring their journeys and the mindsets that have propelled them to success. Get ready to reframe your perspective, embrace challenges, and cultivate the mindset necessary to achieve your dreams. Now let's dive into today's episode and discover how to master your mindset for a brighter, more fulfilling future.
Hello, disruptors, and welcome back to another episode of Mindset Mastery Moments with yours truly, Dr. Alisa Whyte, your #1 mindset disruptor. Today, we're diving into a topic that impacts leaders, teams, organizations, and just humans across the board. Communication. That's how I love to say it, because it's the big C word that a lot of us talk a lot about, but we're still mastering the art on our journey of effective communication. My guest today is a true expert in the area and a champion of openness and honesty. And that, for me, is the bottom foundational bedrock of communication. Our guest, she is the co-founder and chief of staff of No Honesty, a pioneering organization dedicated to helping leaders simplify communication and eliminate divides within organizations. Her journey from growing up on a dairy farm to empowering leaders across industries is a testament to the transformative power of authenticity and connection. Today, we welcome the beautiful and enlightening Grace Gavin to Mindset Mastery Moments. Grace, we welcome you to Mindset Mastery Moments.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Let me make sure we have you in view for those who are watching us on video podcast. So Grace, welcome again. We're thrilled to have you here today. Let's start by asking you to share with us in your own words who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you the shortened version of it. So you shared a little bit, but I grew up as the last of 8 kids on a dairy farm. So a lot of miscommunication, if you will, going on in the household, but also I got to see what entrepreneurship looked like up close. And I thought, man, this has got to be just us with all this chaos going on and all the things. And then I got into the professional world, and lo and behold, it wasn't just us or our family business with chaos and all of the confusion that can go into business. And so looking at that, I really wanted to figure out how to help businesses, but really how to help leaders. And so a couple of years ago, my business partner and I, Ken Bogard, came together to found what has now become No Honesty, really focused on helping teams communicate. Because what we found in working with leadership teams prior is that there was a certain set of teams that would work together really well and work effectively and move very quickly. But that happened to be, sadly, a rarer percentage of teams, and a lot more tended to struggle and to really just have a hard time communicating effectively. And so looking at what was it when we got down to the root of it, what was it that either had a team communicating really well or not so well? And what we found is what you said, the bedrock, the foundation of communication, those two skills of being open and honest. And so we'll talk all about that today, but that has been a wild journey of how I've gotten to here today and digging in with my clients and really helping them be open and honest, being really effective and masterful communicators, because that just makes the difference in the team and it makes a difference for the business. If you don't have a team that can communicate effectively, I don't know, everything gets a lot harder.
It is. What an interesting background. I love that, because I was born in Guyana, South America, where I literally had my own little chicken coop and my own little garden that I grow my vegetables, and we had fruit trees all over. So I feel like there's something that comes from that, and that entrepreneurial mindset set early inside of our lives really helps us. And so how did you, when it comes to you and how you were raised, and what did you learn about communication, or how should I say, what did you struggle at times with in communication growing up, specifically in your unique, I say unique, but everybody has a unique upbringing. But what did you learn about communication through your journey as a young woman?
I think I learned, that's such a great question. I learned how to not upset people, I'll say. And that could look like a lot of different ways. But what that really looked like was, trying my best to be nice and not necessarily saying what needed to be said or bringing out into the open what we were all thinking or seeing or experiencing, but not willing to yet acknowledge.
Yeah.
And so that became really, really tough when a couple of years ago my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so this is just kind of the the way in which I was raised, at least, is to just, we're gonna work hard, we're gonna dig in, but maybe not step back to face the reality of it. And so with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, my dad was a fighter through and through, very stubborn. He jumped right into chemo and all the medications and all those things. But we never really stopped and paused to talk about the reality of our situation. And that was that there was about a 3% survival rate in his case. And so we fought it, he fought it, but never really acknowledged, what does it mean to have a 3% survival rate?
Right.
What is that? What could we be doing with our time maybe differently than just
instead of just pushing forward, or in addition to moving forward?
Yeah. And so that's one of my biggest regrets, is not acknowledging that reality within the family and deciding, is this still what we want to do, or do we want to do this a little bit differently and spend those last, we ended up having 5 months with him after the diagnosis till he passed away, but could we have spent those 5 months differently? I think about that. And that's a huge example from my life, but I see it happening with my clients all the time in maybe sometimes less detrimental ways, but still equally damaging to a company, of saying, hey, let's pull this back, and maybe this isn't the project we need to be doing, or we're approaching it not in the right way. But so many of us are maybe afraid to be the disruptor, if you will, or to be honest. And that's what we really need, is people stepping up to have that courage to make a different choice, I'll say.
I love your honesty. Thank you so much. And my prayers for your family. I can only imagine. I lost my dad 6 years ago, and sometimes it just feels like it just happened. And then sometimes it's like, okay, I'm at peace with it. So it's a thing. And I had those horrible, I think for the first 3 years of his passing, it was like, I've been in this move forward, get things done. Because I feel like when you spoke about how your family was and how your family approached life, which worked for so many things, and it was needed and it was great, it didn't work for some things. And so that's kind of what my journey has been. It's like, oh, this is happening, we're going to take care of it, we'll handle it, but we got to keep moving forward. You got to keep moving forward. You got to keep moving forward. So I use the words I say, we say, and I know I got to get over it. And I know I got to get over it. We use those words a lot. And that alone takes away that honesty from communication, because it's a signal that we somehow receive that you have to get over something. And really and truly, we need to get through it. And the honesty in the communication, mind, body, and soul communication, whether it is the communication we're giving or the communication among groups and peers or family members, that honesty. And that's why I'm so excited to dive in with you, because I feel like first the honesty begins with us. And that's the thing. It's like, what do I truly need in this moment to be 100? And I feel like it's, in that case, it's like, what do I need? And I ask myself, and I become clear on it. And then I'm able to share that request with others. And then in my honesty and authenticity, I may be bringing them to their honesty and authenticity. It's like, yeah, we really don't want to go do anything. We just want to sit here and talk about old times and giggle and play board games, and then tomorrow we can figure out what we want to do. It's okay. So I had to take a pause and just compose that, because someone's listening to us and they're thinking, yeah, that's not what you're supposed to do. Aren't supposed to be moving forward. Why are you two thinking about hesitating on moving forward? Like, after he's gone, we still have all this stuff, but no, it might not be what someone needs or you need. I'm not saying everyone. Some people, that is the best thing for them to keep plowing, but for everyone, it's not. And that's the part of the honesty. So thank you for sharing that. Ooh, I already took so much reflection in my own life when you said that. So let's talk about your company and No Honesty and working with leaders and teams to master communication. Can you share a bit about the kinds of organizations you've worked with and the transformation you've seen them achieve in this space of really using the methodology that you teach, and everything you talk about communication and being honest?
Yeah, absolutely. We work with, all types of businesses, all types of teams. It's really, some of my clients, I have them come to me because they're like, we want to keep improving the team. They have a grow or die mentality, which I love, is fantastic. And then I have some clients come to me that have gone through some really tough, personnel issues, I'll say, that, maybe somebody's leaving the team, or the word toxic has been used, or just doesn't feel like a good environment anymore. And those can be some really tough situations to walk into. But I find that in a weird kind of way, I get kind of excited because I know the difference that we can make coming in there, and it can look different, but it needs everybody's commitment, which is really important. But more importantly, they need the education piece. So when I talk about open and honest, I want to just make this clarification for the listeners and for those who are watching, because
it's going to come to,
because the way that we talk about open and honest is not the way that most people think of it or talk about it. So when we say the phrase open and honest, we're mostly thinking about ourselves, right? I'm going to be open and honest with you,
right,
or I'm going to be transparent, open book, all those things, which is fantastic, but that's really only one half of communication. And so I want to give people the definitions and break it down a little bit differently than what they've probably thought about it. So first, starting with honesty. So honesty, we define as being truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. So that's the me, myself, and I side of things. That's really important. We got to have that on the table. We got to have that to access the true condition, to really know our reality. If everybody around us is being honest, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But what we struggle a lot more with in teams and just as human beings in general is the other side of communication, which is openness. So openness is listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for someone else. So in that way, then we have the two halves of communication that can come together. We have somebody who's being honest and somebody who's being open, so that honesty is actually received, and then vice versa. That person is honest, the other person is open to it. So we're actually having an exchange rather than me just talking at you and then you just talking at me. There's actually the reception happening. People are listening. That's when transformations in teams start to happen, because we're actually listening to each other rather than just trying to figure out, all right, what am I going to say next? What am I going to say next? And then they might have finished talking by then, but we missed half of what they were saying. And I see that happening in teams all the time. It's crazy.
Ooh, open and honesty at another level. You disrupted my mindset. And I love it. So you guys get that. So walk us through a real life scenario in life or business where you worked with someone who their struggle was managing either or both in that relationship dynamic, and you've had to bring them out. What does that look like?
Yeah, I just had a conversation with one of my clients this week. It was a perfect example of it. But so I live in West Michigan, and we have something that we call West Michigan nice here.
Oh.
It's kind of what I was talking about before, but it's like, I will be nice to you at face value, but not really willing to jump into a hard conversation with you and just say, yeah, you're doing a great job if it comes to feedback or things like that. And so I was talking to my client, and she said that they had somebody who wasn't going to come to their weekly meeting. And this is a weekly meeting that they have that everybody is expected to attend, but that person had something else. So they're like, well, I'm not going to go. They had the conversation. You understand this is important? They're like, yep, not coming, whatever. I have this other thing scheduled. And So they have the meeting, and somebody else within the meeting says, I'm really upset that this person wasn't here because I had something that I really needed to talk about, but I needed them here for it. So now I don't get to move forward on this. And then can you imagine what happens for the team if that specific issue doesn't get solved? They can't keep progressing forward like we're talking about. So they're stuck when they actually do really want to move forward. Exactly. And what she told me is that the person then said the next thing is that I'm going to go have a conversation with them and make it clear like why it's so important that this person shows up to this meeting every week, because we need their expertise in that meeting. She said what was really great about that is she said, I don't have to be the bad guy anymore. I don't have to go have a conversation on behalf of that person who was upset with the other person who wasn't there. So we're not creating a drama triangle anymore within the team. We're just handling the conflict directly and still in a really healthy way, and bringing it in the attitude of, hey, I need to be honest with you. I ask that you be open to it. And having that language feels a little bit less like finger pointing, where got less of the blame going on, just saying, hey, this is what we need to progress as a team.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's fire. Oh, I'm just thinking about that scenario because I've been in a place in the corporate space where I'm like, until this makes sense, I'm not coming. That's how I've been there. I'm like, there's no need for me to be there. There's no need. And that was in my past, work. And I felt like one of the things has been my biggest conquest, and I say it so much, it's communication, just communicate. And I said, a lot of times you're still figuring out the right words and the right things, but the best thing is to be honest. I feel like in my journey, and I'm putting myself on the chopping block, the openness piece has always been where I'm literally, and you said it earlier, I'm literally constantly reminding myself, listen, and try to make your rounds on their side of the conversation, meaning get around here as much as you can, meaning stand in their space, in their energy, in what they're saying, and then sometimes even ask for more, because sometimes they need support on articulating and being comfortable to say even more and be open, but just be so open. Yes, yeah, about it. And so it's like things you don't agree with. We just went through election period in the US, and a lot of us have different opinions, and it's, but for me, I've been working more through that period of try to see what their perspective is. One of the things I've used before in a little communication talk is the beach ball. And it really helps to break the ice on here's where we're at, we're trying to, you're seeing this and I'm seeing that. So if we all get that 360 view and allow the openness from each other, we'll end up having a 360 view, which empowers our team to really make the best decision and response to what we're working on. So that's kind of my little take. But the question I have for you, how has the lack of openness and honesty in your definition affect leaders and just organizations in general? What are we missing out on for not having this clear sense of communication practice in our operations? What are we losing? Because I need people to understand what we're missing out on.
There's so much. Like I got two different stories that I'll share with you. I think that exemplifies this, but one of the things that we say if we have either a lack of these is we're missing out on transformational ideas, and we're really missing out on enhancing belonging within our organization. So there was a client of mine that I was working with, and they had this wonderful woman who is on the team, really valued part of the team. And there's a problem going on with that, though, because they would come to her and they would say, hey, can you take this project on? And she would say, yep. Absolutely, I can. And then they would come to her and say, hey, can you take this project on? And she said, yep, absolutely. Said, hey, can you get me this report? But what they didn't know is that she wasn't really being honest in what she said, yep, I can take this on, because she was already pretty close to capacity on the things she already had. Yeah. But she felt like she couldn't be honest with the team. She couldn't say, hey, I'm at capacity. She felt like she had to continue being that nice person that would say, yep, I'll take this on. Yep, I'll take this on. And she was a really valuable member of the team, not just for her saying, yep, I'll take this on, but she had a great amount of knowledge within the team. She did really great work, but by her not being honest and sharing what her capacity was and saying, yes, I can keep taking this on, she got really, really close to burnout, and they almost lost this person on the team. And like, that's just one example. If we don't have somebody's honesty on the table, if we don't know where they're really at, and we keep, not to fault any of the other team members, like, they're just asking her if she can help. And she's kindly saying yes, but is that really helping the team? If we lose her, if she has to step away because she's so burnt out, or she has to leave the team because she can't handle it anymore? No, they figured it out. They figured different ways to share that workload. But if we're not honest with our team members in that scenario, we lose people. And then they don't feel like, maybe they belong necessarily in other instances if they don't have the opportunity to be honest. And then, so that's on the honest side of things. And that happens all the time for teams. But I think, and what I see my clients struggle with more is the openness side of things that we're talking about. I would say we have a free assessment that we have people take, all of our clients, and it measures your ability to be open and honest, because we're putting some numbers to what can be sometimes a little bit of a heady concept. But anyways, so I have all my clients take this, and I would say at least 90% of them have higher levels of honesty than they do of openness. So everybody's struggling with this. But there was one of my business partners' clients, actually, Ken, he had a 3-person leadership team. So I want you to imagine 3 people on the leadership team, but they were also the 3 owners of the team. And so they would come in every quarter to make a quarterly plan with Ken. And they were really good at being honest, I would say brutally to a fault. They would be brutally honest with each other. And so they would come to the point where they're coming up with ideas for what we're going to have for the next quarter. Somebody would throw out an idea. The other 2 people would come in and cut it down and say, that's not going to work, because the sales team wouldn't jump in on that. And the operations team doesn't understand how this works. Then the next person would have an idea, and they would come in and they would just cut it down and say, this is why it's not going to work. This is why it's not going to work. And the tensions would rise, and then they'd have to take a break. And then the tensions would rise, and they have to take a break. And they did this quarter after quarter after quarter. And, I don't know if it surprises anybody, but it was really affecting their team health. Yes. And it was also affecting their profitability as a company. And so then they came to a quarterly that they had in COVID times. So now you've got a lot of other things going on. Yeah. And that same pattern of the tension rising and cutting each other off was happening. But this time it boiled over, and it got really ugly. And so they left that meeting, and they had a plan, but nobody was really bought into it. They hadn't really been bought into any of the plans. They said, yeah, this is what we're going to do, but nobody was really committed to it. And they started having conversations about, well, maybe it's time to split this company. What does it look like to split it into 3? And how do we back out of this? Like, they didn't know if it was going to work. Wow. So they came back for one more quarterly to see what they could do. And that same pattern started again, just a little bit. But then finally, somebody on the team, the visionary, came in and said, I don't want to hear all the reasons something won't work anymore. I want to hear we can if. And what he did in that moment is he finally brought that team's skill of openness, because they had a little bit of a skill of openness. They just needed to extend it. But he brought that skill of openness into the team finally, where they were actually finally listening to each other. And it was amazing, because the transformation that happened after just inviting a little bit more of an ability to listen to each other, they left that finally with a quarterly plan that they were actually all bought into, because they were finally actually heard and respected for each one of them. They weren't just fighting to have their honesty heard. They were hearing each other's. And so they were finally bought in. And this was a couple of years ago, and they finally completely turned it around. They're a really healthy team. They're profitable. They're dreaming about what's next. But they were on the brink of no longer being a company, simply because they weren't listening to each other. They were just trying to get their side heard, but weren't willing to hear each other. And when they could finally flip that and bring that into the room, it made a huge difference for them. It's really exciting to see the stuff that they're doing these days.
Oh man, I love that. That's transformation right there. And I love that you mentioned that it also causes them to lose money. I feel like you lose so much talent, you lose out on people, whether they're still there, but not all the way there, and they're not giving 100, which for me, it always comes down to the bottom line. And I'm always like, you might be a profitable business, but if you really work out these channels of communication and get things going and building that cohesive team that really, where everyone is communicating. I mean, like, there's always going to be room for improvement, but you're talking about that miscommunication piece, of that lack of transparency piece, the lack of openness, and just ultimately creating disconnectedness. And so that's your power, your zone of genius that you bring to organizations and individuals. And so it's so well needed, because if you don't, even if you're making a 10 million profit, you're probably missing out on, my opinion, probably a 20 million profit. So
yeah, there's just, can I share a couple stats with you?
I want to hear that.
It's so interesting. They've done studies and they say poor communication costs 18% of salaries. So like for you listening, think about 18% of your salary and then multiply it by all of your coworkers. And that equals about to like, I think it's $1.2 trillion lost to miscommunication every year. It's insane. And when you do have highly effective communicators, you have 47% higher returns. So like, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. Like, yes, it's great for everybody to be able to be honest and to have that feeling there too. But it really comes down into the dollars and cents too, like you're talking about. Like, this isn't just something you do as, you know, a team building thing. This is an investment. This is how you want to communicate.
This is a money-making machine.
Yeah.
I'm over here with my mouth wide open because I did not do the research. From my expertise in the workforce and all that stuff, I know, I've seen it and I've done the math, but I never did the research. So I love when I have a guest that comes in here. I say this all the time. And this is, I feel, if it's like that in the corporate space with organizations, can we imagine how many millions we're losing in our household, how many opportunities to create profitable businesses and really leave a legacy for a family? The percentage must be even wild, but she just backed up what I've been saying, y'all. And you can't, I'm not pretending to be the expert. She is, and she said what I said, 47%. She's got the numbers, 18% in loss, 47% in profits. You do that math. That's really, we're really only walking around here at 30%.
Crazy.
So my math, if it's not math, then call me out on it later. But for me, I did the math of adding the loss and the missed opportunities, and it came up to 70%. So we're only operating at 30%. So I remember having Bill Lennon on a few months ago, and his episode was already published like in June or May or something. And he has a thing that's called 30% better results, or is it 40% better results? And it was around the same thing. And I'm like, we just don't realize how much we're missing out on. So I love this. Love it. So you talk a lot about simplifying communication as a way to bridge the divides. What does that simplification process look like in practical terms for leaders, especially those who are just leading diverse and remote teams in this area that we're in?
Yeah, it's everything that we've been talking about, but really simplifying down into, am I being honest here? Is the other person being open? And then vice versa. Am I being open? Are they being honest? And those two things, because as you can imagine, I've sat through a lot of different communication training, listened to a lot of different experts, and people have really great content out there and work that they do. But I just kept coming back to it and saying, this is really complicated. And I'm also in business, running this business. And I know I don't have time to think about a 10-step process on how to have a productive conversation. When I'm in the conversation, I gotta have the conversation. And so what am I going to hold on to? Hopefully just at least two things: open and honest.
Right.
And so that's what we're talking about when we come down to simplify, because then what also happens is the top leaders of the company can understand those two concepts, pretty quickly. But then what's really important is that everybody else in the company can understand it too. So I'm not asking you to have the expertise level that I have by any means. But when you can get an entire company to understand what we mean by be honest and be open, simple as that, you're going to get a lot better results than if you're trying to teach them, like I was saying, the 10-step process.
Or whatever.
Are they going to use that? Yeah. So that's what we're talking about. And then even keeping it simple with the rest of our 6 practices, and just saying, how do we keep this top of mind for people, and really thinking through, when we were doing that, giving you a little bit of the background design work of how do we create language around it that creates imagery for people. Because when we're in conversations or we're in conflict, all of our words tend to go out the window, and what's left is maybe some imagery for us that we can hang on to. And so how do we do that for people too, and simplifying it down into those ways?
So absolutely, that takes us into, we know what open and honesty means in your formula. Now, if you don't mind giving us a sneak peek into the 6 steps of what that language and the stuff that you spoke of. I mean, you all have to buy the book. We're not giving it all away, but she's just going to give you a little sneak peek into it so you get the understanding of what you and your organization can benefit from, even if you just got the book and you didn't get the coaching or the consulting yet, which you probably should. 70% better results. I'm just saying.
I appreciate this. You're doing all the hard sales
For me, once I believe on something, because I did dive into your website and I was like, oh my gosh, because there's so much that is out there, but we're in the 21st century, and I don't know, I think we're fast forwarding to the 25th one by now, but how things are going with AI, we need simple, quick, everybody wants drive-through type information so they can apply it. But I think for me, it's more about how applicable and simple things are. And that's what you present in this model of really just creating results. And so I can't wait. So tell us those 6 other principles that you have.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think what I get nerding out about too is that it's simple to grasp at first, and then we can go deeper too. So when I work with clients, like I equip them within the first 3 months when we're working together with the 6 practices, which I'll go through in just a second. But then we get to go deeper after that. Once we have a baseline understanding, then we can go deeper. So if some of the listeners are out there like, I don't need simple, I want to go deep. It goes both ways. So the 6 practices, what we really design those to do is to say, okay, so we know that being open and honest is really important and that these are skills we're building. So how do we equip people day in and day out with practices that they can continue to come back to, right? Like if you're trying to be a bodybuilder, you're not going to the gym once, you're there every day, you're taking your protein powder, whatever it is. I'm not a bodybuilder by any means, but there's practices that go around building up to that. So I'll just go through all 6 pretty quickly and explain them just a little bit. But the first one I already mentioned is our assessment. So we're putting numbers to people's ability to be open and honest. And what I think is really important about our assessment when you take it, your numbers are not stagnant. So this is not like the Enneagram or DISC or anything like that. The hope is that, maybe you get lower numbers, but at least you have a starting point now and you start building those skills and you get closer and closer to 100%. So that's the first of the 6 practices. Then we go into what we call fake you. And so fake you is this facade we project rather than being 100% honest, right? Keeping it simple. Like we know what it feels like to be fake in our bodies when it happens. That kind of, maybe it's a weight that comes down over you or a kind of a masked type feeling. Fake you. How often is that happening within corporate spaces, within small business spaces, within families? Like it's happening all the time. And it's one of these divides that's hurting our ability to really communicate, because if I'm being fake with you, I'm keeping it at a very surface level and we are not going any deeper. We're not creating any kind of relationship.
No connection.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that's practice number 2. Then number 3 is what we call the wall. And the wall is the divide we put between ourselves and others rather than being 100% open. So you can imagine you say something that I don't like or I don't agree with, or you bring me a crazy idea and I immediately put up a brick wall between us. What happens to our communication? It's done. And we are doing this to our yes, exactly. We're doing this to our team members. We're doing this to, maybe our bosses or our direct reports all the time. And you know what it looks like when somebody else does it to you, because their eyes kind of just glaze over and they're like checked out of the conversation.
Sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then what does that mean? They're not really bought in, right? They're not excited about whatever you're talking about or trying to solve a problem. Whatever, the engagement's gone.
Exactly.
So the wall happening all the time and helping clients recognize. And even as you're listening to this, think to yourself, when's the last time you put up a wall?
Are you putting up a wall right now? Are you putting up a wall right now?
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that. So we walk through clients with that in a kind of a reflective manner, if you will, understanding where has this happened previously, but then looking forward, how do we recognize it in the moment in a conversation? Because I'll have it happen, for example, when I'm talking to Ken, sometimes he'll call me at 7:30 in the morning before I've had any coffee, and he'll say, hey, I got an idea for you. I'm like, nope, there's a wall up. And he's like, hey, you're not being very open. You're not listening. You have a wall up right now. I'm like, oh, shoot, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. I still want to get my coffee, bro.
Exactly. So it's recognizing that. I'm like, okay, how do I bring the wall back down? Yeah. In that instance, I need some coffee.
Right.
But if somebody brings me a new idea and I don't like it, I got to work through that. I'm like, why don't I like it? Because the last idea they brought me wasn't very good, or maybe we've tried this already, but they have something different and I'm not really willing to listen to anything they have to say. Mm-hmm. And then that's when we're missing out on transformational ideas. because we're just not listening. It's insane. It's insane. So that's practice number 3. Then number 4 is what we call the agreement. And so the agreement is this simple, powerful script that we teach clients that you can use at the beginning of any conversation. And what it really does is sets up boundaries and expectations around communication. So maybe write this down, but I'm going to give you the script right now. So here's what it is. Will you agree with me on how we're going to communicate? I want you to be 100% honest, meaning I want you to be truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. And I promise I will be 100% open to it. I will listen without reservation. I will put my needs and wants on pause for you. And in return, I'll be honest with you and I ask that you be completely open to it.
Wow.
That's the whole script. Can you imagine if somebody came up to you and started a conversation that way?
Yeah.
It'll never happen. It's crazy. We don't ask for what we really want because we want to be in teams that are open and honest. We want to be in relationships that are open and honest, but we're not asking for it. We're not expecting it.
We're not asking, exactly. We're not asking. So I love that because it just would work for every dynamic, every relationship dynamic. I'm thinking about it like, how do I feel like all that you just said is what I aim to transcend just in my whole being when communicating with individuals, especially on the tough things. It's like, I just want you to be open, but what if I just ask for it and not hope they figure it out? It's what you're empowering me. I like to be very specific. You're empowering me to do is just ask for it. Okay, I can do it. I can do that.
Yeah, exactly. And then what I get really excited about with the agreement is putting it in place with clients, but then helping them understand that this is a living, breathing agreement. So it's not just, hey, let's be open and honest, and then we never talk about it again. We can come back to it. Like the example I was talking about with Ken on the phone, we have the agreement in place and we come back to it all the time. I'll say to him, hey, are you being honest with me? Like, what's going on here? What do we need to know? Or I'll come to him and say, hey, I got an idea. Need you to be open to it. Those types of things. So it's a living, breathing agreement that we come back to. Because again, these are skills, these are practices we're building, and we're not good at it to start. When I first started doing the research and understanding this work, I was like, oh no, I got a lot of work to do.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a constant working on it, right? We're never going to
the awareness begins with this teaching and understanding it and just practicing it little by little. It'll become something you're very like natural at.
Yeah, I use it every single day. Every single day.
And that helps. And you talk about the Michigan niceness. I'm thinking about how that would really evolve because I feel like everybody's got their own type of niceness, but people trust you more, and that likability that you talked about, wanting people to like us. Who doesn't want that? I don't care what no one says. We want to know that we matter to people and that they value us. So even if we don't want to use the word like for layman's terms, we want to know that. So when people know that you're going to be open and honest in this regard, it's like, I can trust Grace. I can talk with Grace. I can trust her to give me good feedback about which house to buy if you're a realtor. She's she's going to listen to what I desire. And they don't know what they're experiencing because they haven't gone through this training or understanding this modality of communication, but they just gravitate towards you because you radiate that way. I'm sorry. I get excited. I get nerdy.
No, I love it.
I get nerdy.
I know. This is the one practice where I bring it to my clients. They're like, it feels so scripted. I'm like, yes, but when you start using it and you are living into it, it becomes less of a script and it just is the way that you live. And so this is the one where I get the most pushback, but then when I start using it, they come back to me like, wow, this is actually really great. I told you, but you had to have your own experience with it. So that's fantastic. So that's practice number 4. And then number 5 is what we call the still. And so the still we've designed to help you uncover and become aware of your current version of yourself today, because we're always evolving. Like we're talking about, we're growing, we're building these skills, we're learning more about ourselves. Maybe we're taking on new experiences, whatever it is. But a lot of us would categorize ourselves as busy individuals, and we don't take a lot of time to pause and reflect and really understand, where is it that I'm at in my life right now? So I take clients through this and we're really building self-awareness, but we're looking at categories in their life and where are you content and where are you discontent? Because if you're content in a lot of areas of your life, fantastic. That's showing up in your leadership. If you're discontent in a lot of areas of your life, it's also showing up in your leadership. And so these are things we need to be aware of so we have the still, that's practice number 5. Then we can lead into the 6th and final practice, which is your pursuit. And your pursuit is really answering the question of what do you really want? So if you think about this still, if we don't know where we're at, then how can we really figure out what we really want moving forward? But it's amazing to me how many leaders I speak to and I say, and I just ask them quite simply, what do you really want? And they look at me with blank stares. Like, you're leading a company, you're leading a team, you're leading a project, whatever it looks like, and you don't know what you really want. You don't know what you're pointing towards, and you're trying to lead a bunch of people to follow you. We got to get clear on what that question is, because then I have, for some clients, I'll walk them through it and I say, what do you really want? And some of them realize, oh, what I really want is not in line with this business. And then it's like, okay, let's have a conversation about, does what you really want change, or do we leave this team and find something better for you? Do we really get people who are invested in line? I had a really cool experience with a client this week where we looked at what their target is in the next 10 years. They wanted to build 100 homes in 10 years, which is really exciting. And then I took them through your pursuit and said, all right, so let's clearly identify what it is that you really want, and had the entire team share. And what was so amazing to see is how each person's pursuit, what they really wanted, played into that 100 homes in 10 years, but in so many different ways. Like, some they wanted to be an expert in their field. Some people wanted to learn more about the process. It just looked a myriad of different ways, but it all played into that. I was like, this is so cool to have a full team bought in, pushing towards this, excited about it, and coming at it in all their own ways. Because that's the beauty of a teamwork, right? Like, can you build a house by yourself? No. But you can do it with a team around you that's dedicated, that's committed.
Going in the same direction. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
It's awesome.
The pursuit. And that's the thing. I mean, I talk a lot about purpose, and I talk about how leaders should be interested into where their people want to go. And I guess that's kind of the same thing. I feel like it should be a part of your hiring practices. It should be a part of, but even when I train into people to interview, I tell them a lot of us are trained to speak the language of the company we're interviewing with. And that's all well and dandy, but I say only speak that language when it's true for you. Like, yes, it's like translate what you want and see how that's in alignment with where they are, where they're going, and where they might possibly take you. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. Just know you got to keep a proper score sheet, accurate data of what these numbers are in terms of where you're going, where that company's going. Because if the numbers are very low on desire and where you're going, you're going to be very dissatisfied sooner than later, even if you're making a whole bunch of money. And I'm going to say this to you all because I do workforce training, but a lot of you are going to hear it, but now it's in your awareness. And some of you, there's a percentage of you in the room who would have to experience it before it makes sense to you. And that's okay too. Just know that that's when you pivot and you might have to go to another organization. I'm hearing you say that you're coaching an executive in a company who is not in alignment. And the conversation becomes as tough as, we just found out that this is not really where you may want to be. What's going on? How do you walk someone through that in executive leadership space? What does that look like? And have you actually had someone who had to phase themselves out of an organization?
Yeah, I had a client that was really interesting because currently everything that I do is team-based. And so I have them go around and share, because I think it's really important that you know not only what you really want, but what your team members really want, so we can help each other get towards that. Because if the people are there and aligned in this is the organization for them, and we can help each other get what we want, they're more invested in the work, but then it also advances the company forward. So specifically, we break it down into what do you really want in your work life? One thing. What do you really want in your personal life? One thing, and getting clear on that. And so I had a team that was going around and sharing for their work life what it is that they really wanted. And we got to this individual who she was invested in the work, but she was really busy. And so she told me, she's like, I could be using a better use of my time right now. I was like, okay, got it. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And so we get to her, and I'm like, I don't know what she's going to say. Honestly. Is she going to keep it surface level? What is it going to look like? And I said, okay, go ahead and share. And she said, I don't want to be in this position anymore. I was like, whoa, was not expecting that
at all.
Yes, and I saw that exact reaction go around the table for the team, and I said, okay, we got to pause here, and we got to talk about
this was with the team. This was not a one-on-one.
This was with the team. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, we got to pause here, and we got to talk about this because I saw the reaction on the team, and she goes, I don't mean immediately. I'm saying I don't want to be in this position in the next 8 to 10 years. And I was like,
that's
how cool. Yeah. That she could share that and make that clear for the team.
Yeah.
When do we ever get a lead time on replacing somebody in our teams of 8 to 10
years?
Yeah. She's like, I love what I'm doing, but it's not going to be sustainable forever. She was like, she was in a tough position, right? But now the team is aware and they can, they can design that seat maybe a little bit differently or look at who's within the organization that we can kind of shadow under this person, or can we move you into a different role in the organization? Because she still loved what they were doing. She just, I just can't do this forever and ever.
Yeah.
But it was amazing to see. And the team it clicked with them. They're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like the freedom she made for all of them in saying that of.
Now it opened up for everyone. It's like, how long do I want to be doing this? And truly, what is that? What's my truth about how long I want to be in this role?
Exactly. And it was just like, wow, okay. And so then not only do clients identify what they really want, which is important, but then identifying what are the next steps too. Yeah. So I'm not just leaving you hanging and saying, here's what you really want, good luck, go ahead, but getting clear on what are the next 3 action steps that we're moving towards that. And so then the team gets to have a really exciting conversation about what does it look like if we're going to help her get what she really wants to exit or transition or whatever it looks like out of this position in 8 to 10 years, how do we start to prepare for that?
Right.
Succession planning that gets really exciting to me.
It is, because we have so much room to create, and now everyone's involved. It's not a hush conversation amongst a few. I mean, like you said, she gave an 8 to 10 year lead in.
Yeah, that never happens. It
never happens. I know for me, the role I was in, it's already been like a year in, and I'm sitting there with the vice president, and I said to him, I said, yeah, this is where I would love to be in this organization in the next 3 or so years. And if not, I'd love to be doing it somewhere else because that's not a spot for me. And my supervisor was like, you literally told him that? I'm like, yeah, because if this company grows, they can grow it and I can be that person that does that. And I was like, I'm so glad I said it to him because that was the direction that they had already been planning for the company. And this is a large company here in the US. That they would be going into. And he's like, we would love to have you. So that click. So he has someone in mind who can help create that program and that space. And I get what I want and the company gets to grow. And that's a conversation we're having like 3 years in advance. Right.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting with the CEO and I'm like, so yeah, I've got another year when the times we're getting closer. So I'm like, I got another year exit. I'm like, I by no means have a job or a position or know exactly what I'm going to do. But now I had to put a deadline for this role because I love this role. But it's not fulfilling me at 100. And I know that there's a dissatisfaction in places that doesn't really bother me right now because I'm still pretty much fulfilled in the role. So I had to put a date for myself that says, this is when I need to transition into what I need, where I'm truly going because I'm holding it back. And so for the company, it seems so untraditional. No one's ever done it. I didn't get fired. I didn't get laid off or whatever. There was a whole layoff and it went past me because I feel like I am open and honest. As much as I've learned to be so far, you're teaching me depths and I'm going to learn more from the book and probably, working with you in some regard. But my point is you don't ever lose being that. And you actually inspire and empower individuals when you're in practice of this. It just resonates so much. Even if someone's giving you pushback, it's because they've put it up the wall. And it's like, because I know when I said someone, are you being open or you have the wall now? Because even as Grace speaks, you're probably saying, you don't know the company I work for. And we don't. And so we're not telling you to go head on and be like, oh, by the way, I decided I'm going to leave in another 6 months. Don't do that. Just don't take that. But work with HR, someone to say, hey, I would love to grow. I really want to experience career growth in the next 6 months. And here's what I'm thinking. Do we see the company going in this direction? Because yeah, 6 months is what I'm saying, but here's where I'm feeling, where I'm thinking. I think sometimes the most neutral is a trusted person in HR that you can include into your career plan, or maybe they can guide you on how to approach the management or leadership into getting you into another position that does facilitate you being in a place of fulfillment, or just graduate out. If you can't talk, get a career coach, talk to Grace. Talk to Grace so she can work with you, because then you're realizing instead of blocking this out and putting a wall up, you're really walling yourself in when you don't take this route. And I'm asking, and Grace is like, gosh, she's going into my stuff. You really want to first practice this with you. Like everything Grace is saying here, my struggle, because I'm that nice, want everybody to be happy, and I genuinely, it wasn't a people pleaser. I do say I was a people pleaser, but it wasn't more about people pleasing for me. It's about keeping people in my work environment happy, my staff, my supervisors. I felt like I juggled that as a middle manager, is all that. And then I want to come home and make sure my family at home, my mom's satisfied, and I was burning myself out. So first I had to learn how to be honest with Alisa and be like, no, I don't want to go to the movie tonight. I just want to stay home. And that was the first thing, not going because my ex-husband at the time wanted to go, and be like, babe, I would really love to go to a movie, but for me, I feel so tired. Can we compromise and go on Saturday instead? Mm-hmm. And it's funny, all I had to do was say that. And he's like, sure, let's do it on Saturday. I'm tired anyway. And I was like, I didn't have to just go along with it so he can be happy. He was willing to work with me. No, he didn't even want to go either. He was just trying to keep up date night for Friday nights, because that's the deal. So it's funny when you open up. So I'm saying practice these things as you listen to us. How about you start practicing it with yourself? I remember saying after I went through divorce, like, oh, I can't, I'm going to meet a great guy and get remarried one day. And then one day I'm like, is marriage really what you want? I asked myself, and I'm like, no, I'm not anywhere near close wanting to be married anytime soon. And I started owning that with myself, and it made me so nervous and anxious that I felt that way. And then finally, I said it out loud to my family. It's like, no, I don't want to get married. It's not something I'm thinking about. Maybe one day I will, but for right now, that's not even on my radar. I've been putting it on my radar because it's our values and it's a thing, but it's not for me. And I loved being married, but it's not important to me right now. And that was like, whoo, and then I start saying it like I am on the podcast in different places. And it's like, that's my truth. And I'm telling you, today it is. Because tomorrow I could change my mind and be like, I'm ready to get married. And that's okay. But once you start practicing that true authenticity with yourself, then you're able to take the steps forward and bravery to practice this. So Grace, go ahead and weigh in. I've just unleashed.
No, this is amazing. This is exactly what I was talking about before, where we start simple, but then we get to this depth, right? Because a lot of times we're so not open to other people that we don't even realize how not open we are to ourselves. Like we have a thought and we're like, nope, can't have that thought. That doesn't fall in line with all the things. And a lot of times as human beings, we fall into these patterns and these ways of being. We follow along with whatever society is doing or whatever our family did, which if that is truly and freely you, that is great, but it's not always. And we just kind of continue to follow that path. And then we see things like midlife crisis happen. Like, I'm not surprised that happens at all. We get to a halfway point and they're like, wait, what am I actually doing?
The conflicts of values. That's what I call it. That's
exactly.
Conflict of values.
So it's just like, how do we do this with other people? How do we do it with ourselves? And coming back to being open and honest, because what's really key here is that we have to do this in relationships, right? So I can go around and be as honest as I want to be, but it does not matter if I don't actually have somebody who's willing to be open to me on the other side. And how do you have somebody be open to you on the other side? Is that, well, you give them that gift first. Yeah. You're open to them. You really listen to what they have to say. And then that's when you create a really great relationship, because otherwise, I mean, what else do we have besides relationships, connections? As human beings, that's what we crave. That's what we need, because as you're talking about the walling ourselves off and really creating that loneliness and isolation, there's been studies on it, right? It leads to premature death and all of the terrible things. But, we got to have that within relationships. And so we got to have it within ourselves too.
Exactly. I love that. And I want people to think about isolation, not thinking about the person who's closed off, who doesn't have friends, who doesn't have family. There's so many people who are walking around, they're the life of the party. They work at a great company, they have a great family, they have a beautiful home and car, and they're still in isolation because they've shut off and turned off their own voice. And so if you're listening to the podcast today and it's like everyone thinks you're fine and you're not, it's more than likely because you've built that wall of ignoring your own self to yourself. Maybe that makes sense. So oh my gosh, this is just so powerful. And the 6 steps, thank you for sharing that with us, but you all can literally ease yourself. And the guests that's on our podcast, they do not ask me to promote their items or their work. It's not even part of a conversation we have. So if you hear me plugging it, it's because I really believe it's a tool you should have in your toolbox. Just get the damn book. Okay, get the dang book and read it. I have a commitment over, I think now I'm in my 6th year where I read 1 book per month. If it's not a really big book, but I read. Readers are leaders and leaders are readers. So I don't care if you don't have a managerial title and you don't work in a big hotshot company. You're leading someone because someone's watching you from a distance or near in whatever role you're playing. Even if you are the guy who's on the back of the dump truck in my neighborhood, just making sure all of it gets in and it's right. You are a leader. So lead yourself first. Give yourself the gift of getting this book at least and going through it with openness to help yourself grow. We want you to build a toolbox. That's why we have Mindset Mastery. So master the art of communicating with yourself, and then you'll become better at communicating your needs, wants, and desires. And then you're able to accept from the openness piece what other people's wants, needs, and desires are. So again, get the dang book. So fascinating. Let's play Flip the Script with Grace Gavin. This is a part of our show that I absolutely love because we get a little bit, nosy and learn some practical stuff from you if you opened us so well with your journey. So Grace, tell us a time where you had to overcome a particular challenge. What was that experience and how did it bring openness and honesty, or bringing openness and honesty help you through that?
Ooh, that's so good. I think that I have so many examples, right? Like, yes, my title is Open and Honest.
Too. Yeah. I'll take a bonus.
Yeah. My title is an open and honest expert, right? But I'm still working on these skills. I'm still building them. I just have the knowledge in my brain. So I think for me, one small example I'll give you, and then I'll give you a bigger one. One small example is that Ken went to this conference and he heard somebody speak. I can't remember the guy's name, but his book is Pick Up the Phone and Sell. So he brought it back and he's on a high and he's like, we got to read this. This is what we got to do. This is all the things. And I'm there rolling my eyes. I am not willing to listen to anything he has to say. I'm like, okay, great. We're on the next thing and then we'll be on the next thing and it'll be great. Then I start actually reading the book and I'm like, dang, this is actually really good. And so I have to practice being open again where I'm like, okay, let me dig into this. Let me understand this concept because it actually could help our business and really be open to it. But if I hadn't been open to it, if I just cast it aside, I imagine he'll still bring me the next idea, but will he bring me the next idea and the next idea, right? And so we do that to our teams all the time. But I'm like, shoot, I got to cultivate more openness. And then on the personal side of my life, I'm working through this with my relationship with my mom. So the agreement I've used with my mom, and that is probably the most nervous I ever felt using the agreement. If you want to imagine, like you're like, oh, I would use this in my team. That seems kind of scary. Go try using it with your mom. It feels really scary.
Yeah.
But what I recognized what was happening in our relationship is that we still had the parent-child dynamic, and I'm an adult now, right? And so we didn't have that agreement of communication going on where it was still just the parent-child versus just, I'm still her child, right? But I'm an adult now. There are things that I've learned. There's things that I understand, in the work that I do, and I see things differently than she does, and she sees things differently than I do. So how do we have a real relationship moving forward? And so that's something that I had to recognize, and then I had to walk through and say, hey, is this also the kind of relationship that you want to have? And thankfully she said yes, but it's like I'm talking about here, it's a continuing work on it. So I have to think about, how am I stepping into this relationship right now? Am I being open and honest, with my mom, or am I not? Because sometimes I default to not. And I'm following those old neural pathways when I'm trying to create a new version of a relationship here. And we're trying to create that together. And so I'm not going to say that this is easy work by any means if you're listening to this, but it is worth it. Especially with those longer relationships where you're like, I wish we were open and honest with each other. It has to start with you then. You have to invite that in, have that conversation, because that relationship has been built on some version of a foundation, but it hasn't been a foundation of being open and honest. So if you really want this in your life and in your relationships, you got to do the work to break down that old foundation and build a new one together. And it's hard work, but I tell you, it's worth it. It really is.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing those inspiring stories. And when you said your mom, I'm like, you better believe. I remember when I started practicing, it wasn't open and honest. Of course, this concept and how you delivered it what you guys packaged is so perfectly brilliant. But I was like, I'm walking in my authenticity. Right? And so it was being authentic and honest with myself. So when I had to talk about, that was the hardest thing for me, was my mom. It was my mom. And then my sister. And it sounded like this. So I was just yelling things out when, like, I would feel this, like, this is a situation, this is a conversation where I would usually be inauthentic and just kind of suck it up for the team and go along with it and go with the flow. And I just I'm feeling it. And then I'm like, you can't be it. You cannot be inauthentic anymore. It's over. You've cut that string. Now it's time to so it just was because I didn't have the words. I didn't have the language. I didn't know. I just knew that I could not be inauthentic anymore in my life. Like I poisoned myself up enough. Literally, it was making me sick. And so knowing their temperament, I prejudged and said they won't listen to me. So I got to let it out. And I don't care what happens after it. And that's a really poor place to be. That's when you get third-party help. But thank God I learned that wasn't a way to do it, and it didn't help anything. It just relieved me of the tension, but then I had now created a different type of tension that was even more toxic. That cycle continues. So I learned it's like you just need to ask. And I didn't have the script. I'm going to get that script. I didn't have the script, but it's like, can I just share with you what I'm experiencing and you listen to me? Like, just listen to me. It doesn't mean how I feel and what I'm experiencing is right. But I just really want to have this conversation where we get through me feeling bad and like you don't understand me. And I'm feeling like, why is it that I cannot connect with you? We're stuck in this space, right? And that was my words. And it helped, but it more looked like for me moving forward, because I still don't think I had the right words. And maybe they weren't ready to go into the place of where I go around and be like, okay, I get what they're saying there, and I get that they're not ready to hear what I have to say. But at least I was honest. I'm comfortable with that, and I can just step away and let that work. And over time, just leaving that space, somehow it magically became that they heard me, or at least they respected my authenticity and where I was, and they verbalized, I trust that you're going to figure out where you want to go, and I value and I just love you, and we're fine. We didn't have like this whole come to Jesus superstar moment, but we definitely don't have the going on anymore, because they understand because I kept showing up in consistency, being honest and open, and it was just different. It was just a dynamic. So I concur with going to the people that truly matter in your life. That's the hardest one, to have open and honest conversations, and you have to take it by strides. So let me ask you this: when you think about transformation, what advice would you give to leaders who may feel stuck in old patterns or unsure on how to even start embracing a more open approach, a more open and honest approach? What would you say to them?
I would say that we talk about transformation as this big, awesome thing, and it looks really cool. But when I look at transformation, when I really see it happening, it's in the small moments. And so if you get one small moment wrong, don't beat yourself up for it, but go to the next small moment and try to win on that one, because then you can stack those moments over a week, over a month, over a year, and you look back at them and they look like transformation. But what transformation is really just those small moments where you make a choice to be open and honest. And then the next moment you make a choice to be open and honest. And they build and build and build upon each other. And then it looks like transformation.
That is so powerful. She just coined the phrase transformation moments on Mindset Mastery Moments. Don't you dare try. It was given by Grace Gavin, okay? That's so powerful. Now, let me ask you this. How do you define success for yourself? How does that align with what you teach your clients about openness and honesty in leadership?
Oh, you are asking the tough questions. How do I
know. I get nosy, and I want to know. I get curious. You notice I'm like, what's she gonna say? What's she gonna say?
Yeah. I would say with what success looks like for me personally, I think I'm always on a journey of understanding what that looks like. As a company, you can see behind, we're really focused on 1 million people impacted.
Yeah.
So keeping that top of mind, that's what we really want. But I would say success for me personally is just coming back to, am I enjoying my life? Am I having fun? And am I doing that with clients that even if we're doing the tough work, we can still laugh, we can still have fun, and work through these things? Because I don't think that I tend to get way too serious a lot of the times. And I'm like, oh, we got to do the work and we got to dig in and do it hard. But people learn and they remember the moments of joy and excitement and fun. And so to me, trying to create more success is more moments of that.
Yes, moment by moment. And that's exactly why we call the podcast Mindset Master Moment. Because mastering your mindset is also taking a lot of pivotal shifts, and just do the moments. Take bite sides. So with that, my last question, and flip the script for you, is what's next for you with your No Honest company? Are any of these upcoming goals or projects that you have, do they have a particular mindset that you need to master to achieve these goals?
Yeah, the biggest one is really 2025 focusing on helping teams and really walking into that day in and day out. So that looks like, whether it's adding clients or having conversations with people, what that looks like can mean a million different things, but chipping towards that 1 million people impacted. So working with new clients and dreaming about how can we help even more? How can we help to simplify more, but how can I show up and really be present? And so what the mindset that I really need and that I'm really working on cultivating is the one of, I don't have a perfect phrasing for it, but it's around failure, right? I'm realizing I have this really big fear of failure going on, and it can hold me back because failure, what that looks like is not everything being perfect.
Right.
It's really unfortunate to me as human beings is that we're never perfect. And I just am really struggling with that. So that's my end of year in 2025 mindset shift that I'm working on is, failure is how we learn, is how we continue to move forward and getting comfortable in it. So that's what I'm working on.
Oh my gosh, you're just I love the vulnerability. You teach open and honesty and you exemplify it in every area. It has not been a question that you have not answered with such vulnerability and openness. Thank you so much, Grace. We are coming to that powerful part of Mindset Bites to Go in our podcast where we love to have you share a form takeaway of 90 seconds to 3 minutes, mindset shifts, strategies, or principle that you would love to just encourage us to implement today and improve our communication or personal and professional lives. So I like to say, just think of it, if this was your last words to the world, what would they be? So we can carry on your legacy, and that kind of rhymes. I like that. So I step away from the microphone and the camera, and it's all on you to give us those words, those challenges, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to give you that space now. Let me get myself out of view.
Hey, I appreciate this. So if you've been listening, my challenge to you is this, and it's 2 questions quite simply. And when you have these answers to these, I'll tell you what to do. But the first one is, what do you need to be honest about? Answer that question for yourself here today. What's the number one thing that you need to be honest about? Find out what that answer is for you. And then the second question, what do you need to be open to? So those 2 questions, what are your answers to those? What do you need to be honest about? And what do you need to be open to? And then my challenge to you moving forward is go take that and go have a conversation with somebody. So if you need to be honest with your boss, go have that conversation. If you need to be open to somebody in your family, go have that conversation and start talking about your communication and your conversations in this context and thinking about, am I honest right now? Am I open right now? And coming back to that. Am I honest right now? And am I open to that? And when you do that and you bring people along into the journey, you'll really watch your relationships and your communication transform moment by moment. That's all I got.
So powerful. Oh, if that was all she had to leave us with something that transforms our lives, it's a challenge that I would accept for myself. Grace, you have been such a phenomenal guest, but I've talked about it all along. So tell us, how do we connect with you? Where do we buy your book? And how do we just keep in touch with what you have going on? We want to know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So if you can connect with me on LinkedIn, it's under Grace Gavin. I'm putting content out there all the time, but I love for people to do the DM slide and tell me you heard this podcast and how you are taking that challenge I just gave you and making a difference in your communication and your relationships. Our website, if you go to knowonesty.com/assessment, so that's know.com/assessment. You can take that. It's a free assessment to take. I encourage you to take it for yourself, but then bring it to your team or bring it to your partner, whatever that looks like, and have a conversation about where are we really at in our ability to be open and honest. And then lastly, you can get the book anywhere that books are sold. We have it in ebook version, paper book, hardback, Audible version. So all of the things. So however you consume books, we got it for you. So
yes, I got the Audible version already.
There you go.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. So I so appreciate it. And as you all know, all the connection pieces to get in touch with Grace and Know Honesty will be in the description wherever you're listening and watching to this. And like she said, please let her know that you heard her here on Mindset Mastery Moments. We love knowing who's getting, where they're getting, and what they're enjoying from it. So give her some feedback. Let us know. And maybe she might come back and share some new things with us as she goes along on her journey. Because we, Dr. Whyte, don't blame everybody on Mindset Mastery Moments. I don't like to let go of my phenomenal guests. They so many come over, and we are blessed to have guests presented to us every day, literally. And so when we choose one, it's because they are in alignment with the message and what I believe personally. So I hold on to them, and they have to be like, probably no one has pushed me away so far. So looking forward to continue being connected with you, Grace. Thank you so much for your gems of wisdom and challenge to us to move forward with mastering our mindsets and mastering communication in our lives, our career and business with openness and honesty. Grace, it's so good to have you. See you in touch. And for all of you, keep mastering your communication mindset with open and honesty. For next time, we're looking forward to see you on Mindset Mastery Moments. Love, light, peace, and blessing. Bye now.